The day I realized my best friend was trying to become me, I remember standing in my own kitchen feeling like a stranger in my own skin. It's strange how a moment can feel both quiet and violent at the same time. I wasn't yelling, she wasn't yelling, but something inside me, something small and soft, snapped like an old rubber band. It happened on a Thursday morning, sunlight spilling across my countertops in that warm honey color I always loved. My kettle was whistling low, almost shy, like it didn't want to interrupt whatever was happening between us. And there she was, Tia, standing by my pantry wearing my sweater. Not a similar one, not the same brand, mine. The cream knit one my grandmother crocheted by hand, the one I only wore on days when I wanted comfort close to my skin. She stood there, barefoot, humming the same little tune I hum when I'm trying to soothe myself. That same soft, breathy hum. She turned and smiled at me like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't crossed some invisible line, like she deserved to stand there wrapped in something she didn't earn, didn't understand. And something in my chest went still. But I didn't say anything, not yet, because a part of me still wanted to believe that I wasn't seeing what I was seeing, that my best friend wasn't slowly, quietly slipping into the shape of my life. I remember brushing the feeling off, lifting my mug, whispering, "Morning," even though my throat felt tight. But that moment, the smell of my cinnamon tea, the whistle dying out behind me, her smile stretching just a little too wide, was the first time I felt a shiver of fear. Fear of losing something I didn't even know could be stolen. Myself. Before all that, before the sweater, the humming, the strange gaze she started giving me, life was simple, warm, predictable in the way that makes you feel safe. I'm 27, living in a modest but cozy two-bedroom townhouse on the east side of town. Nothing fancy, but everything in it was chosen with intention. Soft earth tones, thrifted wooden tables, candles that smelled like vanilla and clean laundry. I've always liked things that feel lived in, but peaceful. And before everything fell apart, that peace was something I protected like a heartbeat. My days were quiet, filled with the little rituals that keep a person grounded. Morning tea, a quick jog around the block, a shower where I listened to old school R&B and let the steam wrap around me like a second blanket. I work as an admin coordinator for a local community center, a job that doesn't pay much but gives me purpose. I like being the person who keeps things running smoothly. I like knowing the elderly folks come in looking for my smile. I like helping the teenagers fill out job applications. I like feeling useful. And then there was Jordan, my boyfriend of almost 3 years. Gentle voice, warm hands, always smelling faintly of sandalwood and car rides with the windows down. He wasn't perfect, no man is, but he was steady. And in my world, steady was sacred. Sundays were our day. He'd come over with grocery bags and little surprises, flowers he picked up from the corner vendor, a new seasoning he wanted me to try, a chocolate bar I knew I'd finish before the movie even started. We'd cook, laugh, talk about our week, and sometimes sit in silence, both of us tired but comfortable. I didn't know how fragile that comfort was, or how easily someone could wedge themselves into the soft places of your life. Tia and I had been friends since high school. One of those friendships built on inside jokes, borrowed lip gloss, and late-night heart-to-hearts on cracked apartment balconies. But life hadn't been kind to her lately. She'd lost her job first, then her apartment, then her car broke down and never recovered. When she called me crying, voice trembling, breath shaky, pride crumbling, I didn't hesitate. I said, "Come stay with me. Just for a little while until you get back on your feet." I remember the silence on the phone, the kind that carries a whole story inside it. She finally whispered, "You mean that?" And I said, "Of course, you're my girl." And I meant it. When she arrived, she looked smaller than I remembered. Shoulders curled inward, eyes dim. She carried 2 duffel bags and a purse that had seen better days. I hugged her tight and felt her body sink into mine like someone exhausted from trying to hold themselves together. "Thank you," she whispered. I squeezed her hands and smiled. That's what sisters do. If I had listened closely, maybe I would have heard something sharp behind her "thank you." Something hungry, something unfinished. But I didn't. Because love makes you overlook shadows, even when the shadows are standing right in front of you. In the first few days, everything felt normal. She helped wash dishes, folded laundry with me, even offered to cook one night, though she burned the rice so badly the pot smelled like charred regret for 2 days. We laughed about it. At least, I thought we were laughing together. But looking back, her eyes were studying me even then, watching the way I moved, noticing what I wore, observing how I spoke to Jordan on the phone. But at the time, I didn't see it. I thought she was just trying to settle in, adjust, feel safe. I didn't know she was memorizing me. Weeks passed. I'd wake up, get ready for work, make coffee. Tia would still be asleep on the pullout, hair wrapped, arm flung across her pillow. Sometimes she'd mutter in her sleep something soft, like a child, and I'd pull the blanket up over her shoulder before leaving. I cared. I really did. After work, I'd come home to find her scrolling job listings on my laptop or cooking something new she found on YouTube. She'd ask me about my day, nodding like she was taking notes. Jordan would stop by sometimes after work. He'd greet her politely, and she'd smile. Always a little too long, I now realize. But I brushed it off. She was friendly, he was friendly, nothing more. Because nothing had truly gone wrong. Not yet. But early signs always hide inside the ordinary. And the day I saw her wearing my sweater was the moment my eyes finally opened, just a fraction, just enough to feel the shift. I didn't know then that the sweater was only the beginning, that my routine, my relationships, even my sense of self would soon start slipping like sand through open fingers. But that Thursday morning, with sunlight painting her shoulders in gold, she turned to me and said, "Oh, hope you don't mind. I got cold." And I forced a smile. "Sure," I whispered. But inside, something whispered back, "Watch her." A warning I didn't yet understand. I started noticing the little things almost immediately. At first, they were so small, so easy to dismiss, that I convinced myself I was imagining it. It began with the way she dressed, not just the sweater, the way she started showing up in clothes that looked suspiciously like mine. The same high-waisted jeans I loved, the same sneakers I wore on my morning jogs. At first, I laughed it off. She just has the same taste, I told myself. But the pattern kept repeating, a new outfit every day that mirrored my own, every detail, right down to the way she folded her scarves. And then came the hair. I've always been meticulous about my hair. I'd spend an hour on braiding or curling it just the way I liked. One Saturday, I woke up early and decided to do my usual twist out. By the time I was halfway through, I heard the water running in the bathroom. When I went to check, I saw her, standing there in front of the mirror, flat iron in hand, mimicking my exact style. She caught me watching her and smiled like it was nothing. "You're really good at that," I said cautiously, trying to hide the edge in my voice. She shrugged, hair shimmering under the bathroom light. "Just practicing, learning from the best." I forced a laugh, but my stomach turned. It wasn't just the hair or the clothes. It was her timing, her voice, The way she laughed a little too loudly at my jokes, the way she leaned toward Jordan when I wasn't around. And Jordan, oh God, Jordan. He was the first one to notice, though he didn't say it outright. One evening, we were cooking dinner together. The kitchen smelled like roasted sweet potatoes and caramelized onions. Tia was helping, chopping garlic with a precision I didn't think she had. Jordan leaned against the counter, watching her with a curious tilt of his head. "You know, you've been practicing in the kitchen, huh?" he asked, lightly. She laughed, tilting her head just like I do. "Yeah, I guess I've been watching you two." I felt a chill creep up my spine. Not the playful kind of chill when you're cold, but the kind that makes your teeth tighten. "Watching us?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She smiled, all innocent charm, but my heart pounded. Something about the way she said it, the soft pitch in her voice, the casual glance toward him, made me want to shrink into myself. Later, at home, I caught her practicing, not consciously, I think, not like she was rehearsing lines, but the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she let her hand brush his when passing him the cutting board, the way she tilted her head like she was copying my mannerisms. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. I kept telling myself she's just grateful, she's lonely, she needs support. But a little voice in my head screamed, "She's trying to take your place." By this point, subtlety was gone. The signs were stacking up like bricks against my chest, heavy and suffocating. She started mirroring my wardrobe entirely, down to my sneakers. She copied my hairstyle daily. She took over my routines, morning jogs, my favorite coffee order, even the playlist I listened to while cooking. And most alarmingly, she had started paying attention to Jordan in ways that were too attentive, too timely, too familiar. And I knew in my bones that I couldn't ignore it any longer. So I began to watch her, quietly, carefully, not out of malice, but out of survival. Every little movement, every glance, every laugh became a clue. And what I found terrified me, because it wasn't just imitation anymore. It was obsession. It finally hit me one Saturday morning. I'd gone out for coffee, the aroma of roasted beans and sweet pastries filling the little cafe, and when I came back, something felt off. The apartment was quiet in a way that made my stomach knot. I didn't hear Tia's usual hum or the rustle of her hairbrush in the bedroom. I called out softly, "Tia?" No answer. I walked toward the bedroom and froze. She was sitting at my vanity, my hairbrush in her hand, my perfume lined up on the counter. She looked into the mirror and tilted her head, copying my exact posture, my expression, the little way I purse my lips when I'm thinking. I took a step forward, heart pounding. "Tia, what are you doing?" She turned slowly, a smile curling at the corners of her lips. "Just trying it your way," she said, her voice soft, almost reverent. "This is my space," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. "And that's me. My hair, my stuff, my way of doing things. You can't just copy it." She blinked, and for a second her eyes softened. But then I saw it. The flicker, the shadow behind her gaze, the spark that made my stomach drop. I like it. I like being around you. I want to fit in," she said. Fit in, not with me. She wanted me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and turned away, heart hammering. I didn't know whether to be furious, heartbroken, or scared. All I knew was that this wasn't the friend I had welcomed into my home. Then came Jordan. I started noticing the subtle changes in the way she interacted with Jordan, the way she laughed a fraction too long at his jokes, the way she lingered when handing him a plate of food, the little glances when she thought I wasn't looking. He didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't say anything, but I could feel the tension building, the quiet heat of betrayal in my chest. One evening, I came home early from work. The apartment smelled like roasted vegetables, my playlist humming softly in the background. I peeked around the corner and saw her sitting next to Jordan on the couch, their knees brushing. She was laughing, leaning toward him in that way that made my blood run cold. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dinner's almost ready." They jumped apart like caught children. Jordan's face fell into a polite, apologetic smile. Tia's eyes, though, there was no guilt there. Only that same hunger, the same desire to be me. I felt my chest tighten and my hands tremble. That night, I barely touched my dinner. I sat on the edge of the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone, while my mind spun out of control. I didn't know how to confront it. I didn't know if she would admit it, deny it, or explode. All I knew was that my life, my home, my love, my identity was under siege. The next week, it escalated. She started answering the phone when Jordan called me, casually slipping into our private jokes and nicknames. She started leaving little notes around the house, mimicking the way I wrote reminders to myself. She was everywhere I looked, everything I touched. My routines were no longer mine. They had become a script for her to follow. One afternoon, I found her in my closet, holding my favorite dress against her body, spinning in front of the mirror. "Tia, stop," I said sharply, my voice louder than I intended. "Why are you doing this?" She looked at me, eyes wide, and said softly, "I'm just trying to be happy. I thought if I could be like you, I could have what you have." That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't jealousy in a simple sense. This wasn't a petty desire to have something I had. This was an obsession, a hunger to take my life, my relationships, my identity, and make it hers. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, hands gripping the sheets. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to fix her, but I knew there was no fixing someone who wanted to erase you to become themselves. And that's when I decided I needed to act, not in anger, not in revenge, but in defense of myself. I couldn't let her continue like this, not in my home, not in my life, not near the people I loved. I had to find a way to stop her before it went too far, before the damage became irreparable. I didn't know exactly what I would do yet. I only knew that I couldn't look away anymore. The shadows were clear now, and I had to face them. It all came crashing down one evening, and I still remember the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had come home late from work, exhausted, craving the comfort of my apartment and the quiet hum of my playlist. I opened the door, and immediately I knew something was wrong. The air was too still, too charged, like the calm before a storm. I stepped inside and froze. Jordan's car wasn't in the driveway. That in itself wasn't unusual. He sometimes went out for errands or to visit his mom. But there was something else. A small sound from the living room. A giggle. Soft, deliberate. I crept forward, trying to steady my breathing, and then I saw them. Tia and Jordan, sitting on the couch. Close. Too close. She was leaning toward him in that way she had perfected, her head tilted like mine when I laughed. Her hand brushed his arm, not accidentally, not shyly, but with intention. Jordan looked uncomfortable, that polite, stiff smile I'd seen before when he didn't know how to react. I felt the air leave my lungs. "Tia?" I said, my voice trembling, trying to stay calm. "Step away from him." She turned, eyes wide for a split second, and then a smirk. "Relax," she said. "I was just talking." I swallowed hard. "Talking? That's not what it looked like." Jordan finally spoke, his voice low, tense. "I think we need to take a break from this conversation." But I couldn't let it go. Not anymore. My throat felt tight, my hands shaking, my vision blurring with heat. "Tia, You've been copying me, my clothes, my hair, even my routines, and now this is crossing a line I cannot ignore." She laughed softly, a sound meant to charm but empty of any real warmth. "I'm just trying to survive. You have everything I want. Your life, your boyfriend, your sense of normal." "Normal?" I asked, voice rising despite myself. "Tia, this isn't normal. This is toxic. You're not trying to survive, you're trying to replace me." She didn't answer first. She just looked at me, the smile fading slightly, replaced by a cold determination I hadn't seen before. Then she stood, slowly, deliberately, and walked toward me, brushing past like she had the right to invade my space. "I just want to feel like I belong," she whispered. I backed away, shaking my head, the tears threatening. "This isn't belonging, Tia. This is stealing. You're stealing pieces of me, my life, my home, and I won't allow it." That was the moment I realized the betrayal wasn't small. It wasn't subtle anymore. She had crossed every boundary I had set. She had tried to insert herself into my life so completely that it felt like I was vanishing from my own home. I felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. This wasn't just about a sweater or copying my hair or even flirting with Jordan. This was about someone trying to erase me, to live my life as if they had the right to take it. I made a decision right then, not in anger, but with clarity. Tia would no longer live under my roof. She would have to leave. I could not allow this toxic pattern to continue. "Pack your things," I said firmly, my voice steady now, though my heart was racing. "You can stay somewhere else, but you can't stay here anymore." Her face fell, a mixture of surprise and indignation. "You're kicking me out?" "Yes," I said, stepping closer, meeting her gaze. "You've been living my life, Tia, not your own, and I cannot let this continue. It's over." She started to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked into the bedroom, opened the closet, and began gathering her things. She stood silently, watching me, her expression unreadable. When she finally left, the apartment felt empty, in a way I hadn't anticipated. Quiet, yes, but heavy with the weight of betrayal. The smell of my cinnamon tea lingered in the kitchen, the warmth of sunlight on my countertops, the soft hum of my playlist, and yet it all felt different now. Like the space had been tainted, like the shadow of her obsession had left a mark I couldn't erase. I sat on the edge of the couch, trembling, trying to process everything. The anger, the sadness, the fear, it was overwhelming. And yet, beneath it all, a small sense of relief. I had drawn a line. I had reclaimed my home. I had reclaimed myself. But the aftermath wouldn't end there. People would find out. Jordan would have to navigate the tension, and Tia, she would carry her obsession with her, one way or another. That night, I realized something crucial. Betrayal isn't just about a single act. It's about patterns. It's about recognizing the small, creeping signs before they become too big to ignore. It's about protecting yourself, even when it hurts to confront someone you love. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about all the times I had let small things slide, told myself she was just lonely, just grateful, just trying. And I understood something painful. Love without boundaries can become a weapon in someone else's hands. But I also understood something powerful. Even after betrayal, you can reclaim your life. You can reclaim your space. You can reclaim your identity. And that's exactly what I was going to do. The next few days were tense, but I knew I couldn't keep what happened a secret forever. The weight of it, the suffocating anxiety was too heavy to carry alone. I confided in my sister first, the one person whose judgment I trusted without question. She listened quietly, hands folded in her lap, letting me spill everything. Every little detail, every creeping suspicion, every violation of trust. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said, "You did the right thing. You had to protect yourself. But Tia, she can't get away with this. People need to know who she really is." I hated the idea at first. I wanted to move on quietly, pretend it had never happened. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that staying silent could let her hurt someone else, maybe even Jordan again, maybe even another friend, another unsuspecting person who welcomed her kindness and got burned in return. So I started telling people. Slowly. First a few close friends, then family. The stories came out, Tia copying my clothes, my routines, even trying to flirt with Jordan. With each retelling, I felt the weight lift slightly, but the shock on everyone's faces reminded me how serious this had been. And then came the hardest part, confronting her publicly. I didn't want to humiliate her. I didn't want to stoop to vindictive measures, but she needed to face the truth, not in my head, not behind my back, but in front of the people she had deceived. I invited her to a small gathering, just a few close friends, my sister, and Jordan. She walked in, radiant as always, unaware that this was not going to be the casual visit she expected. I let her settle for a moment, watching her smile and chat, the ease she carried like a shield. And then I spoke, calmly, firmly, with every ounce of dignity I could summon. I told the story, the copying, the obsession, the manipulation. I spoke of the small things first, the sweaters and the hair, the job applications, and then I brought it to the larger picture, the intrusion into my home, the flirtations, the deliberate attempts to insert herself into my life and my relationship. Her face changed in stages, first disbelief, then defensiveness, then finally shame. She opened her mouth to speak, and I let her, but the words came out halting, apologetic, almost hollow. I I didn't mean, she started, but it didn't matter. The audience, my audience, understood. They saw what I had seen. They felt what I had felt. By the end, there was no cheering, no triumph, only acknowledgement, only the recognition of truth, and that in itself felt like justice. Afterwards, the social consequences were subtle but firm. Mutual friends began to keep their distance. Tia's attempts to connect with people I knew fell flat. Even Jordan, who had remained polite throughout, became wary. She wasn't ostracized cruelly. She wasn't shamed beyond reason, but her patterns were no longer ignored. And for the first time, I realized that honesty, spoken with clarity and integrity, can protect you in ways anger and silence never could. In the quiet days that followed, I began to reclaim my space fully. I rearranged the apartment, putting my own energy back into the rooms that felt invaded. I cooked my favorite meals. I played my music loudly, unapologetically. I let Jordan back into the rhythm of my life without fear or tension. And most importantly, I allowed myself to breathe again. It wasn't instant healing. Some nights the memories crept in, a whisper of betrayal that made my chest tighten. But each time, I reminded myself, I had survived. I had protected myself. I had drawn boundaries where they were needed. And boundaries are not walls. They are lines that safeguard your peace. Through this, I also discovered something deeper. Betrayal teaches clarity. It teaches discernment. It teaches that kindness does not mean tolerance of harm, and that love does not require erasing yourself. And even as I forgave Tia in my own heart, not for her sake, but for mine, I understood that forgiveness doesn't mean returning to what was. Forgiveness means reclaiming your peace and refusing to let someone else's obsession control your life. By the time weeks had passed, the apartment felt like mine again. The soft hum of my playlist filled the air. The smell of cinnamon tea lingered on the counter. The sunlight poured in through the windows, warm and golden. and I could finally exhale, fully and without hesitation. Life was quiet once more, but this time it was steady, intentional, and mine. In the weeks and months that followed, I slowly rebuilt not just my space, but my sense of self. Every little routine I had abandoned under the weight of Tia's presence, I reclaimed. My morning jogs, the way I brewed my tea, even the playlist I played while cooking, all of it became rituals of ownership, reminders that my life belonged to me and me alone. Jordan and I talked more openly than ever. We shared the tension that had built in those days, acknowledged the fear and betrayal, and rebuilt trust, not as if nothing had happened, but as if what had happened had strengthened us. It was a slow process, but every laugh we shared, every quiet evening together felt earned in a way it never had before. I also began to set firmer boundaries with everyone in my life. Not in anger, but in self-respect. I learned to recognize the subtle signs of manipulation, the soft creep of someone trying to occupy your identity, and I promised myself I would never ignore them again. And Tia? I didn't wish her harm. I didn't want revenge. I understood that her obsession came from pain and insecurity, from a life that had been unkind and left her grasping. But I also understood that I could not be the one to fix her. I could only protect myself. I allowed her the dignity of leaving, but I made sure I reclaimed my peace in doing so. There is a lesson in all of this, one I hope resonates with anyone who has ever felt someone trying to take pieces of them without permission. Love is powerful, but it is not a license for invasion. Kindness is necessary, but it is not consent to manipulation. And most importantly, your life, your routines, your relationships, your sense of self are yours. Guard them, cherish them, and do not let anyone slip quietly into your shadow, erasing the edges that make you, you. As I stand in my kitchen now, sunlight pouring over the counters just like it did that Thursday morning when I first noticed the sweater, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Clarity, peace, strength. I look at my reflection in the window, the steam rising from my tea curling around me like a soft embrace, and I smile. Life has a way of testing you, of challenging your love and your patience, and sometimes it hurts so badly you wonder if you can ever recover. But you do. You rebuild, you learn, and you emerge, not broken, but wiser and steadier than before. Would you have done what I did? Would you have found the courage to reclaim your life, to protect your identity, and to face someone you loved when they betrayed the trust you gave so freely? Tell me in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more stories that remind us how fragile, complicated, and beautifully human our lives and relationships truly are. Because sometimes, the strongest love you can show is the love you give yourself.